Are you healthy, fit and strong and do you know it? Are you healthy, fit and strong and do you know it? Are you healthy, fit and strong and how do you know it? Woohoo! I could sing that song all day because I love being healthy, fit and strong, and if you are, I'm sure you do too. However, how do we know what's the right way to exercise, what's the best way to get fit and strong? And if you're giving out information about being healthy, fit and strong, how do you know it's the truth? And I'm sure you hear, like I do every day, research shows, or follow the science, or the experts suggest, or they say, and I always wonder who they are. How do you know, as an exercise professional, as a personal exercise coach, as a parent, a teacher, an athletic coach, if you're a person who wants to be healthy, fit and strong, how do you know exactly what to do? And if it's follow the science, what does that actually mean? And it's been a really interesting journey for me because I started teaching group exercise when I was 13 years of age. I'm now a very old lady. I've had this career path my entire life. And I think more than anybody I've heard research shows. I hear it every day. What I've learnt to do, and I've had to learn this the very hard way, is that research is a very broad term. Science is a very broad term. Experts and scientists and ologists, because there's lots of ologists, have you noticed? Psychologists and cardiologists and endocrinologists, and there's orthopedic surgeons, and there's experts in every area of the human body. And they all do research, and they're all called scientists. Up until I came in, I'm now very privileged to be married to a published, researched scientist. Cayman has a master's degree in health science, and he'll be the first person to tell you that that doesn't really mean that much. The reason I'm not being disrespectful of those letters, and I really respect people that study the human body, but the challenge I've got as a person that doesn't have a master's degree or a doctorate degree, and I'm not an ologist of anything, is that as a personal exercise coach, as somebody that's been committed to healthy, fit, strong bodies all of my life, I found it to be very confusing, because who do you believe? And up until I met Cayman, I just had this general understanding that scientists were experts. Research shows, if a research study proved it, then you should do it. So there's a lot of things that we talk about. 10,000 steps, 3 sets of 10. You need to have breakfast, it's the most important meal of the day. You need to drink 8 glasses of water. These are all things that apparently research shows. And because I heard them from somebody else, because I thought that person was an expert, particularly if I thought they were an ologist of some kind, I believed them. Well, again, I'll share with you, I had to learn the hard way that science and research studies and follow the science are all very confusing and very broad terms. So it comes down to how the study of how do you know that any of that is true. And it could all be true. Whatever you read could be true. Every magazine article could be true. Every research study could be true. But how would you know? And is it possible that not every research study is true? Not every magazine article is true? Not everything that you read on social media is true? But it could be. So how do you know? And that's where I had to go down to, dig deep, go to the foundations, the fundamentals of how do I work it out for myself. Not be told what to think, not believe somebody because they're an expert, but how do I work it out for myself so I can think for myself? And of course, there's 2 parts to the human body that are pretty much not argued. The anatomy of the human body is definitely not argued. The physiology of the body is not argued either, it's just the application of physiology. So nobody argues that we've got a skeletal system, we've got a muscular system, we've got a central nervous system, we've got an endocrine system, an immune system, a digestive system. We've got a body, this is the body, that's the anatomy of the body. The physiology of how they work, again, not argued that much. But the application is argued all the time, and that's where, as an exercise professional, as a personal results coach, I had to work out how am I going to figure this out for myself, because I would listen to 2 cardiologists arguing from 2 ends of the extreme. They were disagreeing on stuff that, well, there's argument about blood pressure, there's argument about how or what your blood sugar level should be. There's argument about resting heart rate. There's argument about exercise, what's a good exercise, what's a bad exercise. And that's argued by experts, the top experts in the world, people who have a doctorate degree, professors of, and you've got two people arguing from opposing points of view. And that puts you, parent, teacher, coach, athletic coach, and I would hope as an exercise professional, in a position where you really want to know for yourself, not listen to the experts, because the experts disagree. So how do you work out whether research is true? How do you work out whether a scientific study is true? And when somebody says research shows, if you ever hear yourself saying that, research shows, have you read the study? And because you understand your anatomy and physiology, can you work it out for yourself? And that's a really interesting question. And that's the reason I'm asking with such passion and enthusiasm. Because if you understand your anatomy and physiology, you can actually do an overview of a research study yourself. Now, the interesting thing is that since I've met K-Man, who is a published research scientist, and the reason I shared before that he thinks that, or he shares openly that doesn't mean very much, is that most people that study something and they get a doctorate degree or a master's degree, it's a very specific area. And once they go outside their specific area, they're now going into an area where they haven't done any research or study. And even in their own area, is it possible that people that go to university are influenced by their professors or their lecturers or the information that's been given to them? So what I'm about to share with you makes everything really easy, and I feel very confident to share it with you because I speak it now at medical conferences, and I don't even have a high school education, let alone a tertiary or medical education. But I have no challenge in any of those situations. And I don't tell anybody anything, and I don't preach at anybody, and I would find it irresponsible and disrespectful to tell people what to do. All I'm asking very passionately is if you learn and understand anatomy, if you learn and understand applied physiology, is it possible that you'd be able to work it out for yourself? So if somebody says research shows, could it be a really good idea to ask for the research, not just believe that such a study exists? Because what I found when I started asking people, could I please read that research study, that most people didn't even know where to find the study. They had heard from somebody else that a study had been done. Well, that's not good science, obviously. If somebody can give you a research study, is it possible that one study doesn't prove anything? And again, the experts in research studies will tell you that you should never just take one study. Then you have to analyze the study. So let's say you do take one study. Who did the study? Why did they do the study? Who financed the study is always really interesting. What's the belief and philosophy of the person or people that did the study? Because it's possible that if you invest time into a research study, it's because you're trying to prove something. Could it be that you're trying to prove your own point? So once you do that with one study, then you have to look at all the studies in that area. A literature review is a really good idea. How many studies have been done on this particular topic? And then go and look at each one of those research studies. And one of the things I always find really interesting is people say that they know their anatomy and they know their physiology. But then I have a look at the methodology of the research study, the exercises that were chosen, how many reps or sets were chosen, how many days a week were chosen, the subjects in the study, the people that they put into the study. And that's where the applied anatomy and physiology just loses all common sense and all logic. Because if you understand what the body's made of and how the body works, there are things that you wouldn't do. There are exercises that you wouldn't do. And I always use this example. A lot of the exercises that are in research studies, a lot of the exercises, or most of the exercises that you find in gyms and personal training studios, if you put those same exercises into a warehouse, onto a construction site, into a workplace health and safety manual, they would be considered dangerous positions to put the body in. They would be considered dangerous ways to move the body. And if you gave those movements to somebody on a construction site, in a workplace, in a warehouse, the company would get sued and the workplace health and safety officer would get fired. And yet those same exercises turn up in research studies to try and prove a point. Well, the only reason I can ask so passionately, and I never tell, I ask very respectfully, why did you choose that exercise? Why did you choose that number of sets? Why did you choose that number of reps? And usually the answer is this, because that's what everybody else does. And I find that embarrassing. As an exercise professional, meaning should I know my stuff? There's only really two parts to that. Do I know my anatomy? Do I know my physiology to the point where I can understand it and apply it to the science and the research? Because I'm getting a bit tired of hearing follow the science and research shows or research says. I'm sure you hear it all the time too. But when you follow up on that research, when you follow up on that science, when you look at both sides of the story, and I always share this, doesn't matter how thin you slice it, there's always two sides. And in research, there's always two sides. And with the human body, with the medical side of the human body, with medications, with anatomy and physiology application, there's always two sides. Anatomy and physiology doesn't change, but the application, there's always two sides. So some people say breakfast is the most important meal of the day, research shows. Other people say only eat once a day. There's people saying now eat once every 2 days because research shows that that's better. 10,000 steps, where did that come from? Why do we say 10,000 steps? What about the speed that we do those steps at? Is it better to run or to walk? There's a whole heap of questions that I want to ask about research shows. Why do we do 3 sets of 10? Have you followed up on why that's the norm in the gym? If muscles are blind and muscles can't count, that's anatomy and physiology, then why do we put numbers onto things? Why don't we just overload the body to the point where it can't do any more? These are just some questions that I'm asking you to ask. If you hear yourself say research shows, have you read the research? Have you analysed it for yourself based on your in-depth, insightful, logical, common sense knowledge of anatomy and physiology? And I'll rephrase that quite aggressively. If you don't know your anatomy and physiology, if you don't understand how the human body works, do we have the right, or would it be irresponsible to be delivering information and saying research shows? Or I'll go another step. If I say research shows and I haven't read that research, wouldn't that be lacking in integrity? All I would be doing would be repeating somebody else's opinion. And I think we've all become the experts in somebody else's opinion. And I share that because I definitely used to be. I used to share a big pile of information. I'd never read the research. I didn't even know who the researcher was and why they did the study. I just repeated other people's information. I was a regurgitator, a vomiter of other people's information. And the reason I use the word vomit, I'm using that very specifically, because that's rubbish coming out of your mouth. It's your body trying to get rid of stuff that it doesn't want anymore. And I think that that's how we should be treating information that's given to us by sources that we don't understand. So I don't want to be the expert, the exercise professional, the personal results coach, the human being that hasn't done my own research. And research is not Googling, and research is not YouTubing, and research is not Instagramming. Research is, I know my anatomy, I know my physiology, and now I can analyse the research based on how the human body works. And if I don't know how the human body works, then how can I analyse a research study? So very simple questions again. Have I read the research? Who did it and why? The most important question for me is who financed that research and why? What point were they trying to prove? And then analyse the methodology of the research study. So the exercises that were used, the subjects that were in it, the reps and sets that were used, the eating plans that were used. And if you can analyse all of that based on in-depth understanding of anatomy and physiology, is it possible that, like me, you'll find that there are opposing opinions, there are opposing research studies, there's a whole stack of information out there that doesn't make any sense based on anatomy and physiology. Please be that exercise professional, please be that coach, please be that teacher. I don't want to give people crappy information, how about you? And I certainly don't want to be a vomiter of other people's opinions. I don't want to be the expert in somebody else's opinion. I want to know my stuff. How about you? How about we become professionals, learn our anatomy, learn our physiology, get people fit and strong and keep them that way for the rest of their life? Because a healthy, fit, strong body, permanently healthy, fit, strong body, not a roller coasting, sometimes fit, sometimes unfit, sometimes need to lose weight, sometimes gain weight. How about pick a size, pick an energy level, Pick a way you want to be for the rest of your life and stay that way because you know how your human body works. Wouldn't that be awesome? So you can sing like I do every day. I feel good, na 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 na. I knew that I would now. I feel good, yeah,